What is this truth we are talking about? This truth, as the reading said, is one and eternal. It has to be realized within your deathless self, within yourself. It's not outside anywhere. And Patanjali also speaks about the same truth. In the aphorism 49 in Samadhipada, he says, this truth cannot be obtained from reading any scriptures, by listening to any scriptures, or by reasoning. This truth, one realizes this truth when he attains samadhi, and it can only be realized. It's completely different from any other knowledge which is limited to this earth. Then how do we realize this truth? How do we attain this samadhi? Or what must be realized here? All saints say that we have to realize that we are souls. Although painfully cramped in this limited body, God nonetheless expects the soul to rise above the sensory perception or the sensory limitation and to realize that we are one with God. To realize this, although we know it, we still need to realize it. And this realization comes along with samadhi. So, how can we attain samadhi or how can we realize it? Well, there are many paths. And the path we follow is the jet airplane route, which is also called Kriya Yoga. And this Kriya Yoga, by practicing it sincerely, faithfully, and regularly, we will realize this truth. We will realize the oneness within ourselves. So, many of us have been benefited through this practice. Many of us, when they get initiated into Kriya Yoga, and after a few months of practice, or even a beginner who is in the basic meditation course says that, I love this course very much. I love meditating. It's changing me. I feel so much joy. And we also make a lot of efforts to share this joy, share this truth to others. But the scriptures say that we should use discretion. It's not secret, but we have to be wise. We have to know when the seeker is ready. Usually, not everyone is ready. How many people are Kriyabans in Delhi? The Delhi's population is about 2 crore people. How many of them? A few thousands would be Kriyabans. It's really disproportionate. Not everyone is ready. And people usually are ready when they are either when they experience anguishing monotony in their life, they just go to office, come back, and they are tossed in the wave of life, tossed around, and they are not able to even get a perspective where they are heading to. What is this life? Why am I here? When was the universe made? What does happen when I die? What happens after that? Some people ask these questions, and then God sends them a guru. Some of them either lose a loved one or they lose something which they love, and then they turn towards God and ask, why God, why? In Autobiography, Paramhansa Yogananda meets a saint in front of Kalighat temple, and in that conversation, the saint says to Paramhansa Yogananda, the creature, he's a Jnana Yogi, so he doesn't refer to human beings as humans. He says, the creature finally turns to his creator, if for no other reason than to ask in anguish, why, Lord, why? By ignoble whips of pain, man is driven at last to the infinite presence, whose beauty alone should lure him. Jesus also says, ask and you shall receive. And only when people ask these questions, when they have this thirst for truth, a guru is sent to them and they are given the technique so that they can progress towards this eternal truth. Otherwise, they are not ready. Okay, so what about those few thousands who already know the technique, who already know, who have a guru? Are they ready for truth? Perhaps not. When Paramhansa Yogananda meets the sleepless saint, he's so moved by the magnetism or the power of the saint. So, and he asks the saint, "Can you please bless me with samadhi?" But the sleepless saint responds, "Your body is not tuned in yet. A small lamp cannot withstand excessive electrical voltage, so your nerves are unready for the cosmic current. If I give you the infinite ecstasy right now, you will burn as if every cell were on fire." And even those who have a guru, who are practicing the techniques, are not ready for samadhi, a state in which they can be one and realize the eternal or the ultimate truth. And what shall we do to reach there? Why cannot this samadhi be granted to everybody, or why cannot this truth be offered to everyone? Many of us who are benefited by Kriya Yoga wish that, what was I doing for 40 years or 50 years or even 30 years? I wish I knew this technique long before. It should have been a part of our school syllabus, some might say, but not all are ready. Even when sharing knowledge, we need to use discretion. You remember in school days, the teacher used to teach in kindergarten or in first grade, the teacher says the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Slowly after 3 years, then the science teacher will come and say, sun doesn't rise and set, it's the earth which spins around, sun is stationary. And then few more years, you will learn that sun is also not stationary, that's also moving around in an orbit. So the truth is given in layers. There are layers to truth, and it's given when the student is ready. If you go to a first standard student and say everything which a ninth standard student should know, the kid will get confused. So the teaching is offered when the person is ready. It would be nice, although, to imagine how it would be if the truth is offered indiscriminately, although it isn't. In Autobiography, there's a magistrate, an arrogant magistrate would come and meet Swami Yukteswar, and he would have an argument with Swami Sri Yukteswar. Finally, Yukteswar ji would say, "Saints are not produced in batches like accountants. This is not your courtroom." It's also funny to think, how would it be if saints are produced in batches? We will be asking each other, like, "Oh, when did you attain Savikalpa Samadhi?" I can go to Chika and ask, "When did you attain Savikalpa Samadhi?" "I in Japan in the summer of 75 or something." "Nirvikalpa Samadhi?" "I went to Yale." But it doesn't work like that. We have to be ready, true sadhana, true Guru's grace, so that we can receive the ultimate truth. So what can we do? Krishna again says in the reading, "Never speak of these truths to the one who is without self-control or devotion." So taking this in a positive way, to realize the ultimate truth, we should have self-control and we should have devotion. Who renders no service, which means a person who serves is eligible to know the truth. By self-control, Krishna means not restraining ourselves painfully from what gives us joy, but to seek joy within ourselves, to turn the energy or to reverse the searchlight of senses and seek joy within ourselves through the sadhana. And service means offering that joy in any form you can with all others. So by seeking joy within ourselves and offering joy in different formats as you are able to, we will slowly inch towards truth. And one fine day, we will be one with the truth. We will be blessed with samadhi by the grace of God and Gurus. Thank you.
A friend of mine, recently asked me, he said, how can I convince someone to my own point of view? And I think he was thinking of a relative of his who he wanted to, convert to a certain thought that he was convinced, or a certain truth that he was convinced about. And he was asking me, and in the back of my mind, I was laughing because, as life teaches us, that very often you cannot do that. It's impossible to do that. And even on the spiritual path, when, like Hari was mentioning, we discover, such wonderful truths, the spiritual journey, all the joys and the wonders it brings. And there is, like we say, there is joy in sharing. So we feel that natural enthusiasm, oh, this is such a wonderful truth, I want to share it with my friends and my spouse and my mother or my father, whoever it might be. But really, we have to kind of catch ourselves and always temper our enthusiasm with discrimination. And it's like, if you're sitting at the dinner table and you see this wonderful dish in front of you, let's say you like cauliflower and eggplant, and you see, brinjal, cauliflower and brinjal, and you see this dish and you suddenly are so joyful, you start having it, and then in your, enthusiasm, you want to share it, let's say with your husband or wife who are sitting next to you, and you turn to them and you're like, you have to taste this, this is so good. And you start perhaps, moving the dish towards them, maybe you take a spoon and you even start feeding them. But really, if two things happen, if one, they do not have the hunger, which is to say, let's say their stomach is full, they've already had a full meal, or secondly, they do not like cauliflower and eggplant, then in both cases, what instinctually happens is that they resist. You see, that motion of you trying to, even out of your own natural joy, wanting to feed them, they resist that. There may even be an aversion, and they may like, no, I'm not hungry. And really, that's what happens on the path, which I think all of us face at some point or the other in our life, that we want, the blessings that flow into our lives, the joy that we experience, we want to share it, which is a good thing. But if we don't do it right, if we don't share it with sensitivity, as the affirmation was today, really, like Swami says in the reading, often you can do more harm than good, because you're trying to feed a person something when, one, they are not hungry. And without hunger for truth, which comes from within, a person will not go towards the truth, will not want to experience a truth. So either they do not have the hunger, or, they are not interested. They yet, perhaps, they don't like what you're trying to serve them, the dish that you're offering in front of them. And they may, in fact, they resist you, they resist that truth that you feel is so great. They may resist that deep, great truth. They may even turn away from that. And so it's good to keep this in mind. And like the reading was saying today, by sensitivity to others' realities. So always being sensitive, especially as truth seekers or devotees, or especially, all of us at Ananda, even if we don't, share in classes, we all have a responsibility to help people naturally. But always keep this in the back of your mind when you're with people, or, with your family or with your friends, that always ask yourself, what I'm about to share, if you feel an urge to share, will this help this person? Does it need to be said? Will it help them right now? Should I perhaps wait? And just tuning into that other person, their reality, can really help their soul. Because otherwise it can just be, you feel this urge to share and you just kind of download everything onto them. But that may not help them. It may go from one ear, go out the other, or they may turn, inwardly, they may resist that. So keep this in mind. And I was remembering as I was thinking about this topic, there was an episode many years ago, I think several decades ago, where at Ananda Village, the community in America, Swamiji once was living there, and so were many other members of Ananda. And there was a person who had some very glaring defects, I imagine, maybe they were ill-behaved or whatever it was, but something which was very obvious to everyone around them. And, several people went to Swami and they said, Swami, this person has this whatever tendency or behavior, and will you please say it to them because we've all tried. And Swami thought about it for a moment, and he knew this person. And he said, sure, let me think about it. And, some time passed, and again people came and said, Swami, you really have to, can you please have a chat with this person and tell them that they need to do whatever X, Y, Z? And Swami said, sure, let me think about it, and, I'll talk to them. And Swami took 10 years to approach that person and to tell them what everyone thought they wanted to or they needed to hear, because he said that they were not ready before that point to listen, to hear, to be open to what that truth was. And he said that if I had approached them before that, it could have done them harm, which the others probably did not realize. But he said enough time had to pass for that even one simple truth to be given to that person. And Swami, when he felt that by his sensitivity, he said that then they were open and then they were willing to change whatever it was that they needed to change. And so often, less is more, especially when we are wanting to share. And the greatest service we can do to others, especially if we feel we want to share with them, is to start often just by sharing vibrationally rather than, communicating verbally. And I remember that, Swami Kriyananda used to say that in Yoganandaji's ashram when he was there, and Yoganandaji would train the disciples, Swami said that it was very interesting. When Swami was put in charge of the monks by Yoganandaji, Swami said one would imagine, Master would say, okay, now sit down and let me tell you how to do this, because he had no experience organizing the monks, many of whom had come to Master way before Swami. And so Swami said, I was expecting Master would come and say, now do this, don't do that, work with them in this way. Swami said nothing. Master did not even say a word to him how he had to go about doing that. And also, many of the great works that Swami did in his life, all the communities he formed, all the music he wrote, isn't it interesting that really you and I, our future depended on all of that? And it was such an important thing in that sense. But Yoganandaji never told Swami those things directly. He never said, one day you have to form these world brotherhood communities. He never told him, you have to write all this music, which is just so fascinating, because really spiritual teaching on the highest plane happens vibrationally. And Swami said that Master spoke very little, but then it is up to the disciple, it is up to the truth seeker to kind of unveil the truth from the Guru through attunement over the years and the decades. And Swami said sometimes he meditated on a certain glance that Master had given in a certain situation. He said after 20 years, 30 years, suddenly he would remember, that's what he meant, you see. And that is how the Guru works. And so when you and I as truth seekers, we have all these wonderful teachings and we want to share it with others, let's also keep that in mind, that the best and the highest service we can do others is through vibration. That if we ourselves, just through our example, can be emissaries of light, if we can just radiate joy, if we can radiate calmness and kindness, really that is all we often have to do. And what that does is all of those things are magnetic. And when then people, your friends or your spouse or whoever see you, they will feel something. And when they do, it will, you can say, it will trigger that hunger in them. And they'll say, what do you have? You have something which I want. And that is the best way. When they approach you with that hunger and they ask you, tell me, what do you do? What do you practice? That is the time. That's the best way to start giving. But even then, not to, download everything. You're like, okay, finally this person is ready. So let me just give them Hong Sa, energization, Om and Kriya in one go. No, it doesn't work like that. Again, by sensitivity to others' realities. So, okay, somebody has come. You feel, what do they need? Do I need to say this? Do I need to say anything at all? Do I need to wait for some time? And step by step, it's like holding a child's hand, and you take them to the next corner and the next block. And that's the highest service we can do to people, to our friends, to our loved ones, just by the power of our magnetism, by our vibration. And that's really how people will learn the most and absorb the truth the most into their own lives.